And with art, if you do just small, tiny creative things for 5-10 minutes, you've got something to look at. And it's so rewarding. I did that. Look at that. It might not be beautiful, but it's an achievement, and it's time for yourself that you've claimed back. And it's so, so important.
My name is Francesca Phillips, and you're listening to the Good Space Podcast, a show where we help you find peace and power in work, relationships, and intuition. Welcome to the Good Space Podcast. Today we have author of How to Meditate with Inky Pathways, Natasha Olaniyan. She's a therapeutic artist and life coach with a lifelong interest in the mind, body, and spirit. She supports the well-being of others by combining a wide variety of natural healing methods and spiritual practices with art. Natasha brings a unique perspective and valuable insights to using art as therapy following her own experience of becoming critically ill after the birth of her second child. She also suffered from PTSD and struggled with coherent speech for a long time. Inky Pathways is a therapeutic art book that combines the benefits of art and meditation. It features an immersive process that helps readers clear their minds, silence their inner critic, and alleviate stress and anxiety. What's great is no art skills are required. I personally don't have drawing or art skills, so this is very appealing to me. It's an art form that isn't rushed or forced, but explored and observed, serving as the ideal creative starting point to relax and quiet the mind. Natasha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. What a pleasure.
Yes, and I believe we got connected because you read the daily email, right?
I do, and I listen to your podcast all the time. It's incredible. I really enjoy listening to you.
Oh, I'm so glad. Well, I am also very glad that you were like, hey, I'm going to reach out because I feel like what I do would support the community so much. And I'm so glad you did, because using art as therapy is something that is close to my heart. When I lived in Zurich, I volunteered at a refugee camp through a writing group, actually, that I was a part of. And we did art with the kids to help them not be stuck in like the heaviness of their circumstance. And so we made food, we did arts and crafts, we did all of these things, and they could actually behave like children again. And you could just see the light in their eyes change. And that was the moment that I realized, wow, art is more powerful than I ever imagined. It's not just something that you create to sell. It's not just something you do here and there, but it actually changes lives and heals people. So I'm really glad that you reached out and that you're part of the Good Space community.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for summarizing the magic of art so well. It really does just bring a magic to life. It's wonderful. And it's especially good that, it's noted as it doesn't have to be the traditional pen and paper or ink or paint. Creativity is just expressing yourself and making something. And it could be, like you said, cooking. It's an amazing freedom, and it just brings so much happiness.
I love that. Okay, so to do a little icebreaker, as an artist, I always am curious, are you more productive in the morning or at night?
I am a night owl, absolutely. Always have been. I just love the still of the night. It probably is connected very much to being a mother as well, because having got your children off to bed, that there's less chances of distraction. But yes, I am. I come to life at night.
I used to be a nighttime person, and then now with the baby, I guess a little before too, I've adjusted to having morning time be my prime creative spurt, just because I think I'm freshest, because by the end of the day, because she's still young. How old are your kids now?
Oh, they're big now. 20 and 13, nearly 13.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm sure once I get to that stage, it'll probably morph back to nighttime. But for right now, I'm a morning person. So were you an artist your whole life? How did you know that How to Meditate with Inky Pathways, this amazing art book, needed to be created, and why this particular method?
I have always been an artist. Ever since I was a little girl, my childhood memories are of me busy making or sewing or painting something. Holiday activities for my mum was easy. She could just give me something to make with my hands and I was happy. And that really continued all my life. I ended up studying art and textiles, and then went on to London College of Fashion. Even though my career went off into a different direction altogether, I've always had some form of creativity as a hobby or a side hustle of some sort to keep me happy. So really, Inky Pathways just evolved with my own needs. It was really a combination of me looking for some way of meditating and doing art when I was in my period of recovery that I stumbled upon Nagashi, which is the inspiration behind all my work. And that's an ancient Japanese art form of marbling. Nagashi actually means ink floating. And it just mesmerized me. It blew me away. It was such a calming influence on me. And it was at a time when my mind was so busy. It was full of so many other thoughts. It just soothed me. It was absolutely magical. And it helped me reach a point of calmness that I had only been able to have prior to the illness, when I was mid-flow in my creative state, doing whatever art or creativity that I used to do before that. And that really was lost for a long time while I was in recovery.
Can you describe what the process is like, or what it's like to open the book and what someone could expect doing it?
Yes, absolutely. So the whole idea behind Inky Pathways was to make getting creative easy. It was to make it accessible. There's so many barriers and blocks, even when you're in a creative mindset. You could look at a blank page and just feel completely stuck and not know where to go with it. Coming from a point of being ill, I found it a real struggle, even as a person who loved being creative, to give myself that push that I needed to find the time to set up a creative project. So Inky Pathways just cuts out all the preliminary needed to get creative. So when you open up the book, you'll find it's filled with, there's various different Nagashi marbled art papers there, and they are there so that there is no blank page. And all you actually need is to sit down with a pen and you can get creative immediately. And I incorporate that with just settling my mind and getting centered, taking some deep breaths and getting into just a peaceful state of mind. Knowing how busy everybody is, especially my days in the corporate world, I could have done with Inky Pathways at that time, when prior to a meeting or, during the busy time of day when I just needed to think straight. I could hardly crack open my oil paints in the middle of the office and start painting and try to find that moment of peace. So Inky Pathways just allows you to step in at a moment's notice, to center yourself and to lose those distracting and inner thought processes amongst the paper. There's, it's full of color, so you don't even need to think about what do I need. You go to the page that is the color that feels most applicable to your mood at the time. You don't have to think about what color do I need to use. I always just use a black pen, and it just creates different pictures each time. It's quite mesmerizing.
That's so interesting. And I want to point out that you mentioned how when you had a corporate job that you didn't have the capacity really to be creative like you were before, or in your illness, how it saved you to have something to put you in flow, because really it sounds like your book puts someone in flow and it just removes all the barriers to being creative and in that flow. I want to point out that it's really amazing because a lot of people think with creativity, you have to spend hours and hours every day. You have to quit your job and that has to be your life's work. And actually, you do it during your break at work. Do it when you're ill and you need to get better. Do it when your kid's napping or right before you go to bed. And it just sounds like this is one way that people can really tap into that side of themselves without the pressure, without societal, I guess, definition of what creativity looks like, quote unquote. And I think this is a fantastic way to just dive in and to just let yourself flow, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really does just open up, just opens up the mind. It was the pressure of having to tidy up after yourself. You know, as a mum, you might only have half an hour free to yourself. And you know that creativity is such a lovely way of self-care for yourself. But if you choose to do painting, for example, that half an hour is going to get used up pretty quickly. And that's not even counting the time that then you need to use to tidy everything away before you get your kid back. Or, you know, if you're doing something intricate like sewing or beads, you know, all of those things, you have to second guess what your child's going to be getting up to and how it's going to interrupt with your enjoyment. And so often those sort of creative fun elements just get put away until you've got a whole day to yourself. And then that creative feeling, that need is never really settled. You don't ever get to get that feeling until much later on. I don't know if you're like me, but as a mum, so many of your needs get put to the bottom of the list every day. And that certainly was me for years. Prior to the illness, you know, as a first-time mum, you know, my needs were always on the list, but they always seem to get carried over to the next day. And creativity, sadly for me, did get put to that bottom of the list, and I really felt a loss without it. So if I'd had something like this, a quick dive in, then I would have just felt so much happier and in such a simple way.
I want to paint the picture just a little bit here because I am hearing so many different experiences that you've had in your life. I'm hearing so many different creative things that you love to do. You're obviously a very creative person. So what does your day-to-day look like? What are you doing now? Is it all creative based? Is it sprinkled within everything? I kind of want to paint the picture for the person listening who says, oh, I work at a corporate job, or, oh, I have kids right now. How does that even look for me? So can you share more about what your day looks like, how you weave creativity in, or even just your experience from before?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm a mum of two, and although they don't need my, certainly the 20-year-old gets on and does his own thing, but they don't need my input all the time. I'm a wife. I run a busy house, and I'm also a life coach and an energy healer. I do Reiki, and I incorporate my meditation skills with my clients, and I also incorporate art into that as well. And interweaved into that, I satisfy my own need to have creativity in my life. So some days I let loose and I just do art. It's lovely, and I don't have to anymore worry about tidying up before my little ones come home from school. And they're quite used to finding inky pictures all over the house drying. And I love it. I love that freedom that I've got that again. Prior to my illness, I was 100-mile-an-hour type of girl. I was juggling lots of things all at the same time. At this point, I was married, had my job, I had my first child. I was trying to run a busy house. I was trying to be perfect at everything. I am a perfectionist, and that has been a big issue all my life. Everything I do, I try to do to the best of my abilities. So yes, I would try to find time to do my own things. And very often that would come out as jewelry in the early days when I had my son. But obviously I had to keep the beads away from him and, sharp instruments. So that was when the night owl me came out, and I would be busy making my own beaded pieces of art. And then I got pregnant with my second child, and in my mind, I was just going to do it all again. Only another slice of my pie was going to be coming out, and, I knew that I'd be sharing my time again with somebody little, and I was really looking forward to that. And in my mind, I thought, they're going to be arty as well, and I'll be able to do all the little arty crafts with my second child. Only it didn't work out quite like that. I got very ill. Luckily, my child was fine. She was born strong and healthy, but I spent 3 months in hospital in intensive care and then high dependency unit following her birth. When I got out of hospital, I refer to these times as the dark years, because when I got out of hospital, I really thought that I'd go back to being that 100-mile-an-hour woman that I'd always been, but I just couldn't. I was stopped dead in my tracks. I had absolutely no energy. I had no ability to do any of the things, even the simplest of tasks I struggled with. And that was for a very, very long time. And during that time, I lost dexterity in my hands even. I had to learn how to walk again. And I'd already mentioned to you that I had to learn how to speak. Everything was taken away from me. So all of my go-to things that I had done previously for happiness, to feed my soul, I couldn't do. And it was an incredibly dark time for me. And it was no wonder, looking back now, why it was such a dark time, because I just couldn't do any of those things. Working through the PTSD, my therapist actually said to me, what makes you happy? And I really struggled. I couldn't even tell her what made me happy. So it was at that point we then started talking about, well, what used to make you happy? And then it was wonderful, because I then started thinking back to my childhood and to my younger years, and it was always creativity, it was always art, it was music, it was dancing, and it was those things that I could no longer do during those dark years. But being able to identify that it was those things made a huge difference. It set me onto a new pathway, really, because then I knew what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to feed my soul with. And it was then that I then actually started listening again to my intuition and following step by step, albeit a very slow process, small things that I could do and reintroduce into my life. And it was taking away from all the normal ways of art that I had learnt to appreciate, and rethinking about how I could create something. And it was then that the perfectionist in me started to struggle, because I'd always wanted things nice and neat or even. And that was where I was struggling, because I couldn't make things nice and neat anymore at that time. So when I started being free with my art, I started using more watercolors with a lot of water and watching how the ink or the paint molded or moved with the water. So all the pressure that I had previously put upon myself to make something look perfect was taken away from me, and I started to appreciate the natural movement of whatever material I was using, be it ink or paint. And that was the turning point for me with the creation of Inky Pathways. There's a Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi, which ties in really well with my suminagashi, and it's the appreciation of the imperfect. And that's exactly what I started to create. It was just to let nature take its course. So that's what it was doing on the paper, but actually saying that to you now, that's what was happening in my life at the same time. And I started to learn to appreciate the imperfect and to see the beauty in the imperfect.
Wow, I think that's a powerful lesson and perspective to gain from such a traumatizing experience. And as a new mom myself, I can't imagine how terrifying that must have felt, because it's already a vulnerable experience having a baby. Like, I have never felt more vulnerable in my life. And so to add something like that onto a vulnerable experience, I am just in awe that you were able to make meaning out of it through art. And obviously, yes, you would have preferred not going through that experience at all. It happened, and I'm glad that you were able to still just evolve into what it was you were supposed to evolve into. And it sounds like it gave you the pause, it gave you the clarity to listen to your inner voice. It brought you back to art, which obviously was very healing. And I struggle with perfectionism as well. I took an art class in Zurich because I thought, oh, painting. And the teacher was like, what did you study in school? And I told her psychology. And she's like, psychology? She's like, because I'm trying to figure out why you're trying to be so perfect. She's like, your lines are too straight. And I'm like, yeah, I just can't let it go. And so after that, I was like, it made me start thinking more about myself, which is a good thing. But I just was like, man, I was trying to be too perfect. So it's funny you say that. It is a hard thing to just let yourself be free and to express yourself. That's the same with dancing. That's the same with singing. That's the same with so many art forms. And just right there, I see the power in how it releases us from expectation, from rigidness, from holding back even from ourselves. The information you're hearing is what I wrote for our daily email, The Good Space Daily. So if you're already signed up, you'll have these tips in writing in your inbox. And if you're not already signed up and you're listening to this after the fact of us dripping them out live, we'll make it so that when you sign up, you can specifically ask for these emails and get them dripped out to you when you sign up. And that's the same with all the other topics and themes that we'll be covering for Feeling Your Best. So if you want to get these short daily reminders to access your authentic self in all areas of life and get resources, chances to win things, all of the good stuff, then make sure to sign up now. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to findyourgoodspace.com. Do you feel like from that moment, you've learned to let go even more?
Yeah, absolutely. It really did help me. I am still a perfectionist. I do still need to watch myself, but in certain areas, I can be free. And it is, as you said, it's incredibly liberating. But yes, that time in my life, it was an incredibly profound moment because it did make me stop. And it was something that, looking back, needed to happen. I needed to slow down. And boy, did it do that. I had to think again and realign with my life purpose. And I've always been an incredibly intuitive person. So I hadn't necessarily been listening as much as I should have been. I used it in my career to help me on a day-to-day basis, but I didn't really listen to my intuition necessarily on the big pathways. I was too busy climbing that ladder and trying to be that perfect manager, that perfect employee, when really my skill sets have always been on that healing side. It's a standing joke at home. I would come home from work and my husband would always tease me and say, were you the doctor again today at work? Because my office would always turn into a doctor's surgery. I'm an empath, and I didn't even know I was an empath until years later. But my office was always the doctor's surgery. People would come in from whatever department and just offload, and I'd make them feel better, and they'd go off light and happy, and I'd be left with all their crap. And it would happen every single day. So it was a standard joke, were you the doctor again at work? And yes, I was. And so I was being that healer, even in the corporate world. And I didn't listen to my intuition. Look, this is what you should actually be doing. I just thought, I'm helping people. And then I would do my work after that. Again, I put all my work off to help somebody else. And it was on a daily basis. And I ended up working all the time. I should have listened to my intuition earlier, and I should have perhaps gone into energy healing earlier and done the meditations and all this artwork. But, I didn't listen. I was too busy trying to juggle all these other things and be that perfect woman, the Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Don't we all, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what our society sells us. And I do want to say that I don't think should have is like, I think everything happens right on time. You know what I mean? I feel like everything happened in its divine order for you. And it's very clear that you were left little pieces of information along the trail and you eventually got it, which is great. And
I'm obviously a bit slow.
No. I mean, slow by what standard, right? I mean, I've learned that God's divine timing, his idea of time is not even like the same as mine. So you are doing great. And I also want to take a moment to point out as well that there is this pervasive idea that we're sold that there's a certain path we have to follow, climbing the corporate ladder, doing the traditional path. I felt guilty for so many years for not following that. I was always conflicted because I chose to work in music, which was not conventional. And so that was an interesting, fight with myself. But often the creative callings that we have, the callings of our soul, we put, second, third, fourth, fifth, last, because we feel like, one, we can betray ourselves that way because who else is going to care, right? Like we're the only ones that are going to care. And then two, it's like, oh, society says it needs to be this way. So sometimes we espouse the values of the world, right? Before realizing our own values, which you obviously change that. And I'm working on changing that. And so I also I just want to point that out for whoever's listening, that what you feel called to do and to create matters. And who says that money or status or these other things that the world tells you is more valuable is. You get to choose what's more valuable. And when someone told me that, it changed everything. Because I used to think money was the most valuable thing above my creativity, above all of these other values that I had. And it's like, but why? And I didn't even know that I was doing it until someone pointed it out to me. And so now it just opened a whole world as far as what I can do in my life. And I don't have to feel like I need to follow what other people expect of me.
Absolutely. It's liberating, isn't it, when you finally realize that you don't have to actually prove yourself to anyone. Just do what you absolutely love, and you feel so much more fulfilled. And really, you get rewarded from that as well, because you're doing something with so much passion. You will be rewarded for it in the end. It may not be the normal route, as you said, but absolutely, at society, at school. It puts so much pressure, especially on women, I think, that so much is expected of us now. So yeah, we need to cut ourselves a bit more slack.
Absolutely. And I also want to add to this that putting yourself first and your creativity and your soul's calling first, it doesn't mean that you have to quit your job, leave your family, move to another country. It doesn't mean that all of these big things have to happen. I say that the best way to put yourself first is a morning routine and having some form of creativity or whatever you're called to do as part of that routine. My routine has adjusted a little bit because of the baby, but I do certain things every morning to take care of myself. And then I write as soon as she's napping. That's the first thing I do, because if you give your best time and attention first thing, even if it's 5-10 minutes, or if it's at night, whatever it is, even 10 minutes, it's like you're putting a stamp on your life and you're saying, what I care about matters because I'm giving my time and attention to this right now. And then I can go do the other stuff. So I'm just saying, even 5-10 minutes is a statement. It is a statement.
Absolutely. 5-10 minutes is such an achievement when you have a little baby anyway, isn't it? It's such a treat. I remember just thinking, my God, I just want to paint my nails. It shouldn't take that long, should it? But when you've got a little person, how does that happen? But absolutely, giving yourself 5-10 minutes a day is nothing, is it? Really, in the grand scheme of things. And yet we find it so hard at times through our life to do just that. And with art, if you do just small, tiny creative things for 5-10 minutes, you've got something to look at. And it's so rewarding. I did that. Look at that. It might not be beautiful, but it's an achievement. And it's time for yourself that you've claimed back. And it's so, so important.
Yes. And it creates confidence, right? Because like you said, you see this thing you created and you feel proud of yourself for showing up. I think the act of showing up for ourselves too is just so much confidence building. For someone who might be afraid to practice their creative talents, maybe they know what that calling is, but there's just this barrier of fear. What advice would you give them?
You've just got to try and do little steps, really little steps. If you don't know what your creativity thing is yet, it's just explore all different things. Creativity, like I said, it doesn't have to be that traditional paintbrush, because so many people that I've spoken to have been put off by being told as a child at school that whatever they did wasn't good enough. Or, you're a terrible artist, you're a terrible drawer, what is that? And those sort of comments stay with you into your adulthood. So it's really putting all those previous comments aside and having the knowledge that you don't have to do creativity for a purpose. It doesn't have to be a gift that you're going to give somebody. It doesn't have to look good. It is just freedom to explore something that you might enjoy, be it putting your thumb in a lump of clay and start there. Put your finger in that lump of clay. Does it feel good? Can you mold it? Does it bring back memories of when you were a kid and you used to play with plasticine? Have that freedom of choice. Go to haberdashery stores. Are there threads? Are there buttons that you're drawn to? That will be the start of a creative project. I could spend my whole day in a haberdashery store being inspired by just the colours of fabric. Touch things. Colour is massive. So start noticing what you're drawn to. Start noticing colours or textures that you like the look of. That could be in the fruit and veg aisle in your local store. Notice those tomatoes. Some of them are green, some of them are red. Which ones do you like? Why do you like that? That could then spark a moment of creativity in the kitchen at home, making a lovely salad. But it could equally inspire you to get your pencil out and start drawing it, or drawing on the fruit. You know, I used to do that a lot with my kids. I'd send them into school with an apple or a banana and draw a funny face on the banana, and they'd love it. It open up, oh, I've got a funny face with funny teeth sticking out. You know, it just starts you off onto another step of exploring, of making you smile. And I think that's what creativity is what actually makes you smile.
It's so great that you drew on your kids' fruit and vegetables. They probably loved that so much. And it just shows that you can be an artist of the everyday. You can infuse creativity and art into everything. I'm so glad that you brought that up, removing the pressure and just doing it for joy. How can I feel joy doing this? Because I often catch myself in that mindset as well. I can't write songs unless I know how I'm going to sell them or give them to an artist or whatever. And it's like, no, even my therapist told me this. She said, can you just write to write and not have any attached outcome or expectation? And I've thought, that's what I used to do, but apparently I've lost touch with that in certain things that I used to do. So I'm really grateful for that reminder. And I'm sure a lot of people listening as well will feel that same way.
That's the perfectionist in you, though. Still coming out.
I know it is. It sneaks up just when I think I had it handled. It shows up somehow, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there. What makes you feel inspired and like your best self on a day-to-day basis?
I think noticing, just going slightly slower inspires me. Every day, you were saying about your morning routine. My morning routine will involve being grateful and having some affirmation and setting an intention. And I try to incorporate that into my everyday. And the intention, before I do any task, I try to set an intention of how I want it to turn out. And I think it's at that point I can get inspired, because I'm then open to spirit. I'm open to, I think it's the slowing down that I actually notice whatever is around me. So for me, colour is a huge inspiration, and I'll get that from fabric. My love of fashion has never gone, and that then turned into a love for interior design. So fabric and beads have always been massive for me. So that will inspire me, and it might inspire me to try on some crazy outfit. You know, that could be that activity for that day, but very often it will inspire me to create something in those colours, or to get that sort of fluidity into a piece of mine. Nature is massive for me. I absolutely adore flowers and leaves and just the texture on plants. So that again is huge. So when you're slowing down and your intention is to enjoy yourself outside, it's those things that I would then notice and appreciate. And then I would try to incorporate that into whatever I was feeling in the mood to do. It might be just a little flower petal design that I'll do on the table. It doesn't have to have a purpose other than looking nice for that moment. Or it could be that I want to make a friend a card with those flowers that I've seen that day. It could be that I've pressed some flowers. It's just incorporating and being free to notice.
I enjoyed listening to how you incorporate creativity, because it's spurring my creativity. Pressing flowers, I'm like, okay, I want to learn to do that. That sounds really fun. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your energy. And if someone wants to find you, Inky Pathways, what's the best way for them to do that?
Come over to my website, www.inkypathways.com, and you'll find a lot more information on there about Inky Pathways and what it can do.
Wonderful. And we'll make sure to link that in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can just go over there and hop onto the website. Is there any last thing you would love to leave someone listening? One thing that you hope they take away from this conversation?
If anybody is feeling that there's been a life-changing moment and they're feeling lost, or they feel that they've lost their mojo and their way, just to know that they're not alone, and there are so many small baby steps that they can do to start getting themselves back onto track. And for me, it was creativity, and for them, it might be as well, just to explore and to feel that there is a life after whatever life-changing moment is happening.
Natasha, thank you so much.
Thank you. I've loved it. Thank you so much, Francesca.
If you like what you're hearing so far and feel inspired or changed or just motivated after hearing this message, please consider joining our membership. We work so hard to dissect information and make it simple and digestible for you so you can go out in the world and be a light, connect to your authentic self. And we really want to continue being that landing place for you. So if you're considering even one message or brand to support, we hope that you'll consider ours. And if you want a link for that, it is in the show notes. Now it's time for an affirmation. I hear my inner voice and take the necessary steps to express what's mine to create. If you found today's tips inspiring or thought-provoking, share it right now on social media and make sure to tag me at Francesca A. Phillips or at Find Your Good Space, and also weigh in the comment section at findyourgoodspace.com. You can find links in the show notes. And if you have a spiritual or mindfulness problem that you want me to unpack on an upcoming The Good Space episode, or an awesome manifesting story you want to share, give my podcast phone line a ring right now at 917-719-0867. Also, don't forget to download my free morning routine guide. It's what helped me reduce my anxiety, increase productivity, and so much more. The link to everything I mentioned is in the show notes. See you soon.